the question stopped me cold. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind that made the whole house feel suspended between memory and silence. The kettle had just clicked off in the kitchen, and the scent of fresh tea drifted into the sitting room where I sat staring at nothing in particular, pretending to read a newspaper I hadn't turned a page of in nearly 20 minutes. Then Eleanor stepped into the doorway. She was still beautiful, though not in the way magazines promised women should remain beautiful. Hers was the beauty of years shared and burdens carried with grace. Silver threaded through her chestnut hair now, and the soft lines around her eyes were maps of every laugh, every tear, every sleepless night we had survived together. She stood there clutching the edge of her cardigan, her voice trembling in a way I hadn't heard for decades. "Why don't you want me anymore?" The words struck harder than any accusation could have. For a moment, I simply stared at her. Then I smiled, not with amusement, but with the kind of aching tenderness that comes when love has become too deep for easy explanation. "Because," I said quietly, "you gave away what was mine." Her face fell. And in her eyes, I saw the heartbreak of a woman who had spent months convincing herself of something that had never been true. That was the moment I realized how far apart silence had pushed us. And how much had been left unsaid. Eleanor and I had been married for 38 years. Long enough for our lives to settle into rhythms so familiar they often passed unnoticed. We had raised 3 children in this house. We had painted these walls together, argued over furniture placement, laughed ourselves breathless over burned dinners and failed Christmas puddings. We had held each other through funerals and celebrated promotions and sat side by side through every ordinary Tuesday that truly makes a life. We had built something solid. Or so I thought. Yet over the past year, something had shifted. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Like sunlight fading so slowly you don't notice the room growing dark until evening has already arrived. I had grown quieter after retiring from the school where I'd taught literature for 32 years. The first few months felt like freedom. No alarm clocks. No essays to mark. No assemblies. But eventually, the stillness began to weigh on me. Purpose, I discovered, does not vanish gracefully. It lingers like an unanswered question. Eleanor noticed before I did. She would ask if I wanted to walk into town with her, and I'd decline. She'd suggest visiting friends, and I'd invent excuses. At night, she'd reach for my hand in bed, and sometimes I'd pretend to be asleep. Not because I didn't love her, but because something inside me felt dimmed, uncertain, difficult to explain. And Eleanor, being Eleanor, blamed herself. She began changing little things. Buying new dresses she didn't need. Wearing perfume she hadn't touched in years. Styling her hair differently and casually asking if I liked it. I noticed every effort. And said almost nothing. Not because I didn't care. But because I was ashamed. Ashamed that after a lifetime of being her steady harbor, I had somehow become emotionally adrift. Then, 3 months earlier, our youngest daughter Lucy had called. She was crying. "Dad," she'd said, "I don't know what to do." Lucy had always been our brave one. Fiercely independent, endlessly optimistic. The child who scraped her knees climbing trees and laughed while we cleaned the cuts. Hearing fear in her voice was like hearing a church bell crack. Her husband, Daniel, had lost his job unexpectedly. Their savings were nearly gone. Their little boy, Oliver, needed specialist tutoring for his learning difficulties, and bills were piling faster than Hope could manage. "We'll figure it out," I told her. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. Eleanor came into the room and knew immediately something was wrong. When I told her, she didn't hesitate. "We'll help. We're retired, Ellie. We'll help." There was no debate in her voice. That night, after I'd gone upstairs, she quietly opened the old cedar chest at the foot of our bed. Inside was the jewelry her mother had left her. Nothing extravagant. A sapphire pendant. A gold bracelet. A pearl brooch. Pieces worn on anniversaries and holidays and all the moments she wanted to feel close to the woman who had raised her. The next morning, the chest was empty. I found the receipt tucked inside her handbag later that week. Sold. Every piece. The money had gone straight to Lucy. Eleanor never mentioned it. When I asked, she smiled and said they needed it more. I should have told her then what filled my chest. How seeing that receipt had undone me. How deeply her kindness had shaken me. How profoundly I loved her for it. Instead, I said only, "You shouldn't have." And she mistook my awe for disapproval. After that, she withdrew. Just a little. Enough to leave spaces where warmth used to live. The distance widened quietly. Until now. Until she stood in the doorway asking why I no longer wanted her. And I finally understood what my silence had cost. Her lips trembled as she stared at me. "What do you mean?" I set the newspaper aside and rose slowly. "You gave away what was mine," I repeated gently. Tears gathered in her eyes. "I don't understand." I crossed the room and took her hands. They were colder than they should have been. "My future anniversary gifts," I said. She blinked. "What?" "The jewelry." Her breath caught. I smiled through the sting behind my own eyes. "You sold every piece your mother left you to help Lucy. And I've spent 3 months wondering how I could ever replace something so precious for you." The first tear slipped down her cheek. "Oh. I wasn't pulling away because I didn't want you, Eleanor. I was pulling away because I felt I'd somehow failed you. You gave away treasures I can't replace, and I couldn't stop thinking you deserved better than a husband sitting around feeling sorry for himself in retirement." Her mouth parted, but no words came. So I kept going. Because 38 years deserved truth, not half-spoken fragments. "I've been lost these past months," I admitted. "Retirement made me feel smaller somehow. Useless. And instead of telling you, I shut down. I thought I was protecting you from my uncertainty." She squeezed my hands. "Oh, Henry. I thought if I kept quiet, I'd sort myself out and come back to myself before you noticed." A soft, sad laugh escaped her. "I noticed. I know." She looked down. "I thought you regretted me." The pain in those words nearly broke me. So I lifted her chin until her eyes met mine. "Eleanor Whitmore, I have regretted many foolish things in my life. Forgetting our second anniversary. Buying that dreadful green wallpaper in 1997. Agreeing to assemble Lucy's swing set without reading the instructions." A weak laugh trembled from her. "But marrying you?" I shook my head. "Not once. Not for a second." Her tears came freely then. And because some wounds heal only when witnessed, I let her cry. I held her the way I had held her the day her father died, the day Lucy was born, the day our eldest left for university. The way love learns to hold over decades, not tightly enough to trap, only firmly enough to reassure. When her breathing steadied, she leaned back slightly. "You really thought about anniversary gifts?" "Daily." A watery smile touched her lips. "That's absurdly romantic for a man who once bought me a vacuum cleaner. It had excellent reviews." She laughed properly then, and the sound filled the room like sunlight. That evening we talked for hours. Really talked. About fear. About aging. About retirement and identity and how easy it is, even after decades, to stop saying what matters because you assume the other person already knows. By midnight, we had spoken more honestly than we had in years. And honesty, I discovered, is not what threatens love. Silence is. The following morning, I woke before Eleanor. For the first time in months, purpose stirred clear and bright. I dressed quietly, left a note by the kettle, and drove into town. At first, I wasn't sure where I was going. Then instinct guided me. I parked outside a small community learning center I'd passed 100 times. A handwritten sign in the window read, "Volunteer tutors needed." I stared at it for a long moment. Then walked inside. The director, a cheerful woman named Margaret, looked delighted when I introduced myself. "A retired literature teacher," she said. "You're exactly who we need." That afternoon, I signed on to tutor children struggling with reading. Children like Oliver. Children who only needed patience and belief and someone willing to sit beside them long enough for understanding to bloom. For the first time since retirement, something clicked back into place. Not who I had been, but who I could still become. When I came home, Eleanor was in the garden trimming roses. She looked up as I approached. There was caution in her smile, as though part of her still feared yesterday had been temporary. I held out the volunteer forms. Her eyes widened as she read. Then she looked at me. And in that moment, I saw her recognize the man she'd married, not because he had returned unchanged, but because he had found his way forward. "Oh, Henry. I think," I said, "I've been waiting for permission to begin again." She smiled. "You never needed permission. That was 6 years ago." Oliver is thriving now, his confidence growing stronger every day. Lucy and Daniel recovered, steadied themselves, and built a life richer for having weathered hardship together. The Learning Center has become my second home. And every Thursday afternoon, Eleanor joins me there to help children with art projects and tea breaks and the 1,000 small kindnesses that make difficult learning feel safe. Sometimes I catch her laughing with a child, her hands still graceful even without the jewelry they once wore. And I think how strange it is that I once mourned those lost treasures. Because she did not lose them. She transformed them. Into schoolbooks. Into tutoring. Into stability for our daughter. Into hope. That is what love does when it is real. It turns possession into generosity. Fear into honesty. Endings into beginnings. Last week, on our 44th anniversary, I gave Eleanor a small velvet box over dinner. She opened it carefully. Inside was a simple silver pendant shaped like an open hand. Nothing extravagant. Just elegant and quietly beautiful. She looked at me, puzzled. "What does it mean?" I smiled. "It means the hands that give away love never come back empty." Her eyes filled again, but this time with joy. She fastened it around her neck and reached across the table for my hand. And there, beneath the soft restaurant lights, with decades behind us and whatever remained ahead still unwritten, I understood the truest thing marriage had ever taught me. Love is not proven by what we keep. It is proven by what we are willing to give, and by the courage to keep choosing each other after every misunderstanding, every silence, every season of becoming. If your heart has grown quiet, speak. If distance has crept in, reach. If love feels lost, look again. Sometimes it is not gone at all. Sometimes it is simply waiting, patient and faithful, for someone brave enough to say what should have been said all along.